I'm Shruti from Maia Design. So we're an interior design office. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly walk, and we are 5 years old and we're turning 6. So we've been around for a little bit. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through images of some of our work and then talk a little bit about the process that we follow. So, this way, right? This is a brewery in Whitefield. Oops. And this project we've collaborated with an architect. And a landscapist. Toast and Tonic is another restaurant and bar. This is a home that we worked on. Oops. Oh. Sorry. Okay, so the reason why I showed you all of this work is that a lot of times people think that interior designers have a certain style. I don't know if that works with architects as well, but the way we approach projects is that every project is very different from one another, and there really is a purpose and a reason why we approach projects the way we do. So visually, our work is different. I'm going to start with Toast and Tonic. With interior design, a lot of times what happens is that you're limited to what you are given in terms of size. So you don't have necessarily too much flexibility with what you can do. In this particular case, we actually had a really open-ended brief. It was just a design of gastropub. And we had an old site. It's the old. How many of you have been to Toast and Tonic? I don't know. Okay, so not a lot of people. Okay, this makes it a little harder. But we had the old monkey bar, which was on that road, and we were just asked to refurbish it. It was a very open-ended brief, and we sort of had to come up with what the direction was. So we had this, in this particular case, the whole project was very material-driven. This was the site before, where it was monkey bar, and a lot of times in interior design, you really have to design keeping in mind who the client is, what their strengths are, and what they're really trying to do with the product. So in F&B, in this particular case, the chef Manu Chandra, he's very well known, and so the strategy was, how do we sort of highlight his strength of food, and how do we bring that as a concept? Also in this site earlier, we also had very low budgets, so we had to, we've retained the floors, we've retained the walls. The site is taller than deeper, and so the previously it was a black ceiling, so we were like, how do we sort of really just open this space up, right? So if you see at the back here, there's the bottom side of this stairwell. So we literally had this site and we had this material, and we were like, okay, so now what do we start doing with it? So this is what it is now. So sometimes sites and constraints in sites actually give direction to the design. So we started working with the forms, and the whole the design direction that we sort of took was it was organic, and how do we make it about the food? So we really had a lot of fun with just sort of seeing where does food come from and the ingredients. So with spaces like this where you're working with clients, where it's a restaurant, there's a lot of strategy involved, because it's a very temporary sort of experience that you have. It's not like a home where you're in the space for longer. So what we try and do is really figure out what the vibe of the space should be, or how someone should feel within the space, and how the space can sort of make you feel a certain way, whether it's something that needs to be a little bit more vibrant, or something which is a little bit more formal, where the seating. So one of the things that make this space is actually how closely the chairs are placed to one another, because it sort of allows for a lot of movement around the tables, which then sort of create this buzz. Um, we work with a lot of different materials. So we actually just left the floors, painted the walls. We sort of looked for material with the lighter color. So we work with birch ply and the chipboard, and then we've just used the cross as a visual element that sort of ties through the space. So we worked with steel that's then acid rusted, and just creating a space really where everything actually ties up to the design of an F&B experience. It's not just the interiors, it's the music you play, it's the quality of the light. Everything ties up to sort of create that experience. So we sort of took it quite literally as to where does the produce come from. So the direction it sort of started taking was, this is shaping, this is sort of turning out to be barn-like. So we just, we pulled in animals and had that made. This is the basement. So again, we've left the floors, we've just painted the walls, and again, it's more about a very casual cellar vibe that we were going after. So what becomes important in interiors is also how you sort of, in some cases, style the space. So here, again, it's fairly literal. Like we went out to the farms and actually got dried corn and barley and wheat to actually style the space. Now, people might not notice it, but it actually all comes together as more of a sensitive sort of interaction with the space when you walk in. And in this particular project, because there was no brief, the food menus then sort of started taking from this direction. The menu became about the ingredients and local produce, while it was global cuisine. So it's a very collective sort of approach that then offers an experience to people in the city. So these are just little sketches that then we actually made all the. We work with artists a lot, include the fun elements or whatever. So this is a lot of how do you suspend it. Fairy lights, that was when our farm was sort of coming alive. Also, I don't know if you can see it in this picture, we work with furniture as well. So, I don't know if you can see it, but we've got the weave pattern going everywhere, on the roofs, on the chair, we've got the weave cross. So that's sort of what we took as the visual direction, and there's a lot of texture in the space. Oh. Yeah, this is when the corn came from the farm. It was really exciting. This is another project. This is different, where we had more of an open space. We work with an architect and a landscapist on this one. This is a white field that is in Whitefield. So again, some of the direction that our work takes is how do we sort of change the way people interact with each other on a smaller scale. In this particular case, the concept was sort of a maze. And the fact that there's so many IT people in Whitefield and they come in large groups, and the whole beer drinking culture. And we wanted to stay away from the whole industrial woody thing that's happening in a lot of breweries across the city, because again, it becomes a differentiator for the client. So here it's, so we put up the structure, and here again, everything is we decided to leave it open. As you walk in, you've got this maze that we've just extruded from the floor, creating seating patterns, which sort of engages larger groups to come in to the space. We've got grass on the floor, and we did quite an extensive sort of plumbing plan, whatever that then allows for the drainage and everything. And here it's really about green, because in Bangalore people love the outdoors. So how does the upstairs and the downstairs, every upstairs connect to the central space? And we've just used the maze form everywhere. So that's another image, and we have little shops that sort of intercept this maze-like form. And the lights are, again, So this again, we've just literally carried for the maze. We've got a lot of terrariums hanging from the ceiling. It's just very light as a space. It's very light, open, airy, and it's just easy to go and have a drink. So again, we had a landscapist who worked with us, where the suspensions had to be really, really light. The plant suspension, so the kind of the soil and everything, and also easy to maintain and not have flies come in and all of that. So everything is open, it sort of connects. Just another view of the space. So I agree. So basically everything is on a 2x2 grid. The maze, the wall paneling that we have, the facade, everything, and then it's just a green and grey palette. So again, what becomes important in a space like this is like, how do you really, I mean, there's so many bars coming up in Bangalore. How do you really make it a different experience for somebody who's walking in there? How do you sort of, make the space such that you can actually control people and how they navigate within the space in a very small scale? And again, the material palette comes into play, and then we work with furniture and everything. In this case, it was metal. We use a lot of metal. Even the maze table and everything is made with MS. So again, I think it's about interior design is not just about, I mean, of course the visual matters, but it really is about how you can engage in very small scale as well. So this is an older project that we did. It was an incubation space for Titan. It was a very old house. And this is a conference table. We had no idea how people would use the space. It was a project that they were sort of trying for the first time. So this is the living area of an old house that was converted to a conference room, but then we designed tables that could then just sort of break apart, depending on how people who would then consume the space would actually use it. This is one of the rooms that was converted to, so every room became a team room. And here it's about how the table, and we actually have cross and knots in the middle of the table. And again, it's about engagement. So the way we look at interiors is that it really is about the design of an experience, and a lot of things actually matter in the approach you take. The site, a lot of times you just don't have an open site, so you have to work with what's given to you. The client makes a big difference as to who the client is and what is the vision of the client, and how, because we could have given a toast and tonic sort of site to somebody who wasn't a great chef, but he would not have been able to pull it off. It could have looked, it couldn't have worked if the right music wasn't there, so it really is a collective sort of process that comes together. So a lot of strategy is involved in interior spaces, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Like it's why, what, when, and for whom. That actually is really, really important in interiors. Like, who do you design for? You have to be sensitive to all the variables, and it really is about the feeling and the soul of the space and what its purpose is.